Hey everyone, I have a little right at noon, so we will go ahead and get started and continue to admit people from the waiting list as we get rolling. My name is Sunny Brown. I'm an assistant director with the Ole Miss Alumni Association, and we are thrilled that you have joined us this afternoon. We've been doing these upfront virtual talks with several of our esteemed faculty and deans from across the university for the last couple of months during lunch, and have really enjoyed getting to hear different pieces of life from them, what they're doing in their research, as well as what's going on in their schools. And we're very fortunate to have Dr. Rick Balkin today with us from the School of Education. I will introduce him shortly, but let me go over a little bit of housekeeping right quick. Please remain on mute, as most of y'all probably know, being on Zoom so often. Please remain on mute, and at any time feel free to enter questions into the chat box, and we will address them throughout the presentation and make sure that they get answered by the end. So we're on here for about an hour, and we are thrilled to have all of y'all with us today. So with that, I would love to introduce Dr. Rick Balkin to you. He's a professor, assistant department chair of leadership and counselor education, and the coordinator of educational research and design in the School of Education here at Ole Miss. He also currently serves as the editor-in-chief for the International Journal for Advancement of Counseling. He began his career as a professional counselor in 1993 and has worked in academia since 2003. His counseling experience with at-risk youth was formative to his research agenda, which includes understanding the role of counseling and relevant goals for adolescents in crisis and counseling outcomes. Dr. Balkin now has over 90 publications, which is outstanding. He has published in the area of religious diversity and forgiveness, and developed a model and measure for counseling clients through issues of forgiveness and conflict, which is what he'll be talking to us about today. He has a forthcoming book with the Oxford University Press, which is titled Practicing Forgiveness. So with that, I will let you take it away, Dr. Balkin.
Hey, thank you, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be here. So I guess at the time that I set my intro, it was a forthcoming book. It's here. It's at Square Books. I did a book signing yesterday. I got to sign some copies, so kind of cool. So it's not a textbook. It's actually it's a book for you for everyone on the topic of forgiveness, and I'm excited to talk about this today. I'm going to share my screen with you all and talk a little bit about this topic of forgiveness. Yeah, so this is the book, Practicing Forgiveness, A Path Toward Healing. And I didn't get into this topic in the traditional way. I got into this topic because of a person I met. So my background, when I finished my master's degree, I went to go work at a psychiatric hospital on an adolescent unit. So these were kids ages 12 to 18, admitted to the hospital because they were a danger to self or a danger to others. What that means is that they were expressing threats of harming themselves, suicidality. They might have even tried. They might be cutting on themselves. They might be addicted to drugs. They might be running away. They might be involved with gangs. So there was just a multitude of internal problems of depression and self-esteem and thoughts of harming yourself, but also external problems of conflict and stress and acting out and violence. And so these were the kids that I worked with. And they would be locked in the hospital for a period of time, usually about 2 weeks was the average length of stay, though sometimes as short as 5 to 7 days. And one of the young women who was brought into the hospital through the emergency room was Sheila. Sheila came in because she was expressing suicidal threats. She wanted to hurt herself. And what had happened with Sheila is that Sheila is at school, and she tells her school counselor that she's been sexually abused by her father. And actually shows a picture of herself that her father took of her to her school counselor. The school counselor does everything she's supposed to do. She calls the abuse hotline, she files a report, Child Protective Services gets involved, tells dad he has to be removed from the home during the investigation. And she ends up being so she ends up being hospitalized. Dad is removed from the home, and there's a police investigation. All sorts of things are happening, and I am doing the very first family session with mom and daughter. And this is about 48 hours after admission. And we sit down in the family conference room. And to describe the family conference room to you, so there's a sofa at one end of the room, there's a chair next to me, and what's happening is that the daughter comes in and she sits on the sofa, and the mom sits in the chair next to me. Usually the kid and the mom are sitting together. And the first words out of the mom's mouth was, "You know, as a Christian, you have to forgive him." And I look at the mom, and without missing a beat, I look at the mom and I go, "Wouldn't that be convenient for you?" And mom looks at me like she's about to tear my head off. And I'm like, "Well, then you don't have to choose between your daughter's disclosure and your husband's denial. If she just forgives him, it can all be swept under the rug, can't it?" So that family session doesn't go so well. I end up going to court and testifying, and dad ends up going to jail. Sheila ends up being placed with other relatives who are supportive of her. That's kind of the aftermath. But this concept of, as a Christian, you have to forgive him, that really disturbed me. And this case sticks with me. It sticks with me for 5 years. So this case I saw back around 1998. And in 2003, I finished my doctorate. I moved to McKinney, Texas. I've joined a synagogue, and I'm attending Yom Kippur services, the Jewish Day of Atonement, where we talk about forgiveness. And I'm still thinking about this. You know, as a Christian, you have to forgive them because, what does that mean? I'm not Christian, I'm Jewish. And, I've heard the old anecdote of turn the other cheek, but is this true? Is forgiveness a cultural or religious mandate? And during this Yom Kippur service, I attend a study group afterwards. And I learn about this Jewish conceptualization of forgiveness. And the first type of forgiveness in Judaism is called kapara. And it refers to the forgiveness that only God can give. It's spiritual forgiveness. And then the second type of forgiveness that's talked about is selicha. Selicha refers to restitutional forgiveness. I borrow your lawnmower, I break your lawnmower, I repair your lawnmower. We're good. Nothing's no problem. We're fine. And then there's this concept of mechila. So I want you to pause for a second while I say that. Mechila. A lot of people go mechila. No, not mechila. Mechila. You know that sound. You know when you make that sound. Usually not a good thing that's about to come out from the back of your throat. But that's the sound that we make in Hebrew as we say mechila, and it means to wipe away debt, so that what's owed to you, you're not going to get, and you just say, what I want from you, I'm never going to get. You don't owe it to me anymore. So maybe someone borrowed money from you and never repaid you. And you know you're not going to get the money back. All right. And you're also not going to, keep asking for it. You know it's not going to happen. You're just done with it. So you go, you know what? I'm not going to hold any ill will against this person anymore. I'm not going to wake up brooding about this anymore. I'm just done. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to reconcile your relationship with this person. You might just go, all right, this person, I had to forgive their debts, and that is that. And I thought to myself, that's it. That's what's missing when we talk about forgiveness, because there's this idea that that there are some things that you can't make restitution on, like slander. You leave this presentation today, you get on Facebook and go, oi. Now, you may not be Jewish, you may not go oi, but maybe you do. Maybe you go oi, all right? And you go oi. I'm in this presentation of University of Mississippi alums, and I listened to the speaker today, and he was horrible. And you put it on your Facebook page, and it gets 30,000 hits and goes viral. And then you're like, oh, wow, I didn't expect it to go viral. And meanwhile, people are like getting on the website and going, who was the speaker? Oh, he's horrible. Rick Balkin is horrible. And you know what? You feel really bad. You erase the post from Facebook, but it's already out there. And you end up sending me an email and you say, oh, Rick, I'm really sorry. I put this on my Facebook page. I didn't expect it to go viral. And it got 30,000 hits, and I'm really sorry. But it's already out there. Even though you've deleted it from your Facebook page, it's out there and it can't be taken away. And then the only thing I can do is I can go, you know what? It's fine. There's nothing I can do about it. And so I thought about this with Sheila. How what she wanted from her father, she's never going to get. What she wanted from her mother, she is not getting. And I thought maybe there is something to this idea that forgiveness doesn't have to always be interpersonal. Sometimes it is intrapersonal. It's within oneself. And it doesn't obligate us to reconcile this relationship. Rather, what we just want to do is forego the ill will that we hold toward this person and move on with our life. So how does this work? How do we get there? Because it's one thing to say, I'm not going to hold on to any ill will towards this person, but it's another thing to really do it. We have decisional forgiveness, and then we have emotional forgiveness. And so what I did is I developed a model. And it started out as a conceptual model. And I call it the forgiveness reconciliation model. And the first step in this model is collaborative exploration. And it refers to this process of talking about what was done to you, talking about the person who caused harm. Well, why do I have to talk about it with someone? Are you telling me I need counseling? No. Now, first of all, there's nothing wrong with going to counseling. Counseling isn't just for people with mental illness. It's for everybody. All right. Sometimes we just need to work on our stuff, and we all have stuff. All right. It doesn't mean that we're diagnosable. I tend to look at mental health as part of a wellness paradigm, that rather than thinking about it in terms of a mental illness, I look at it in terms of mental health and wellness. All right. You see, sometimes when we're dealing with conflict and even trauma, it's so bad that it's unmentionable. We can't talk about it. Think about that for a moment. Think about something that happened to you. And at the moment that it happened, it was so bad you couldn't even speak of it. And then at some point, you did. You put it out there in the universe. You talk to a friend, you talk to a mentor, maybe you talk to a counselor. But this idea of mentioning it made it less severe. So I'm a real big advocate for the idea of how talking reduces the severity of it. I'll give you an example. I was leading a group one time, and a person in the group had a real anger management problem, and he's says, you know, I hate my mother. I hate her when she tells me what to do. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being totally no problem at all and 10 being very severe, what is it? He goes, it's a 10. I said, it's severe. Yes, it's a severe. And 1 is no problem, right? So your mom telling you what to do is a 10. He goes, yeah. I said, okay. And then this client spoke up, and she says, when my parents got divorced, I went to go live with my dad. And I knew my dad smoked pot, but I didn't know he was into drugs. And he and I started smoking pot together. And then one day he offers me crystal meth. She says, and I turned it down. I didn't want to do that. And so he put it into my dinner food, and I got really sick. And then he raped me. She says, now I'm a crystal meth IV user. I've been raped by my dad for the past year, and I just want to die. And I'm thinking to myself at this moment in time, that's a 10. And the kid who said his mother telling him what to do was a 10, he looks up and he goes, okay, mine's a 4. Oh, yours is a 4. But then I looked back at this young lady who had given us this 10, and I thought to myself, you know what? What she has expressed is really horrible, but she shouldn't die. As a matter of fact, I believe that she can recover from this. I believe that in her adulthood, she can live a fulfilling life. That as traumatic as this is, she can get over it. And so even a 10 isn't really a 10. You know, we have all known people to overcome serious obstacles and severe trauma. It makes me wonder, you know, what might feel like a 10 at the time might not be a 10. It just might feel that way at the time. And so talking about the issue is one way that we decrease the trauma of it. And at some point in time in this dialogue, we have to ask the question, what is the role of reconciliation? Sometimes reconciling with the person who caused harm is beneficial, and sometimes it's not. And folks, it's always context bound. Let's say your son or daughter brings home a friend, and that friend steals $20 out of your wallet. You might look at your son or daughter and say, that person's not allowed in our house anymore. But what if the person who stole $20 was your niece or nephew? Oh, now we got to have a talk. You see, the same situation, but the context has changed. You know, I've dealt with couples who have struggled with infidelity. A couple who has dealt with infidelity and they've been together for 6 months is a lot different than a couple who has dealt with infidelity and they've been together for 25 years. Those are very different situations. And how they go about reconciling that relationship and renegotiating that relationship is very different. I believe that we learn a lot from our stories. And some offenses might be major offenses that are somehow people get redemption. You know, we see this in Star Wars. You know, Darth Vader is a really bad guy. I hope I'm not spoiling this for you. If you're just sitting down to watch the Star Wars episode, I'm going to mess it up for you, okay? But, you know, Darth Vader's a really bad guy. He blows up planets, all right? And, you know, but what happens? His son, Luke, believes they're good. There's good in him. And right before Luke is about to die at the hands of the emperor, who's like, you know, throwing lightning at him. Yes, that happens. Darth Vader picks up the emperor and throws him into some like type of like fire pit, you know, and, you know, he's going to get resurrected, but we don't know that at the time. And we believe that Darth Vader just killed the emperor. He's going to look at Luke with his own eyes, say, "You're right, Luke, there is light in me." And then he becomes a Force ghost and looks glowingly at his son, who is now a Jedi. All right. Great story. There's redemption. And we're attracted to stories like that. But not every story has redemption. We also have Voldemort in Harry Potter. Voldemort kills Harry's parents. And he doesn't get his parents back. And Voldemort doesn't change. He's a bad dude until the end. And what Harry wants most, to experience in his life the love of his parents, he's never going to get that. And so we see this idea that forgiveness and reconciliation are separate processes. All right? During my bar mitzvah, because it doesn't have to be a big thing. I've talked about big things like trauma and you know, severe trauma, but it doesn't have to be a big thing. During my bar mitzvah, when I was 13 years old, we had a reception, and my mother made this beautiful smoked turkey. And one of the guests at the reception, an older gentleman, walks up to my mother and says, "Susie, this is really good ham." And my mom is like, "Ham in the synagogue? Are you kidding me? I would never serve ham in the synagogue. It's smoked turkey." 30 years later, I kid you not, 30 years later, at my daughter's bat mitzvah, my mother walks up to me and says, "And Arthur Schindler accused me of serving ham at your bar mitzvah." And I'm looking at my mom, I'm going, wow, some things are never forgiven. All right. It doesn't have to be a trauma. All right. Maybe you go to lunch with somebody on a regular basis, and every time you take turns paying for lunch, and every time you go for lunch, you know, you go to City Grocery, Bouret, some really nice restaurant. And when your friend takes you to a restaurant, your friend takes you to Chili's. Now, there's nothing wrong with Chili's. It's a fine restaurant. You know, it's a decent establishment, but it's not City Grocery. And so, you know what? You're getting more and more irritated by this. You feel like this relationship is unfair. And you might decide, you know what? I'm not going to go to lunch with this person anymore. And so reconciliation, how we reconcile, is different. And sometimes reconciliation is beneficial. And when it's beneficial, you can meet with the offender, and the offender expresses remorse and change, and you can renegotiate the relationship. This often happens in couples counseling, where the couple does want to stay together, and there's a change, and they move forward. But sometimes reconciliation is not beneficial. The person who caused the offense is abusive. They're neglectful. They're unkind, and that's not changing. Or you hope that the person will change, but they won't. And so there's a grieving process that happens here. What you want from this person, you're not going to get. And so you go through this grieving process, Very similar to how it is when you lose someone. Denial, anger, negotiation, until you get to acceptance of, I'm going to quit expelling energy into this, and I'm going to be fine. And so forgiveness then isn't interpersonal, it's intrapersonal. It's within oneself. You're deciding to wipe away the debt. Mechila. So that is the forgiveness model. And I call it the forgiveness reconciliation model. That sometimes we experience remorse and change, and we can renegotiate the relationship. Sometimes there is no remorse and change, or reconciliation isn't beneficial at all. You know, when I have worked with victims of abuse, like in domestic abuse shelters, women who've been abused by a spouse, we've often had to work through whether or not reconciliation is beneficial. And if it is beneficial, has this person sufficiently changed so that it's safe to go back? You know, sometimes we have to protect ourselves. Sometimes it's not safe to go back. So, so that's that's the nature of this model. You know, and again, I want to emphasize that you're not a forgiving person or an unforgiving person, but that this process is truly based on context. And with one person in one situation or one circumstance, you might make the decision to try to renegotiate the relationship. But in other situations, you might not. So I want to pause for a second. You know, because this is context bound, I want you to think about a situation. And you don't have to share it. I just want you to pause and think about a situation in which there might be some unresolved forgiveness for you. Because that's normal. It's part of the human experience. Somebody who has caused some type of harm or infraction, whether minor or not, and you're trying to decide what to do with this person. So as you're thinking about that, I want to do something interactive with you, something that's kind of fun. To explain this process. And all you need is an iPad or iPhone if you have one handy. And I'll take you to that in a second. But let me first show you what I did to, with this model. So I created a model, and, this model I created, it was an idea based on what existed out there in the literature. And I wanted to validate it. I wanted to do research and go, is this process of the forgiveness reconciliation model of collaborative exploration, exploring the role of reconciliation, evaluating whether the offender has expressed remorse and changed, and making the decision to renegotiate the relationship or go it alone, does this really happen? And so I developed a measure called the Forgiveness Reconciliation Inventory. And I said, think about a time when you were harmed or wronged by someone. If a counselor or caseworker is administering this to you, consider an issue you may be addressing in counseling. How did you feel toward this person? How was your relationship affected? And then I said below, you'll find a statement written in bold and a list of word pairs. Between each word pair are several squares. And for the following word pairs, you place a check mark on the appropriate square that indicates the extent to which you feel more closely to one of the words. You'll have a check mark for each word pair. And so most people are trustworthy or untrustworthy. And so you would check the box above if you felt strongly that most people are trustworthy. The extent to which you feel differently could be represented by checking one of the boxes to the right of the present mark. And so I developed this measure. So think about this for a second. Regarding the person who harmed me, I feel. So what I want the person to do now is to look at how do they look, how do they feel about the person who harmed them? Collaborative exploration. And then I developed, 6 opposing adjectives. And I do, if you're into research and measurement, I have psychometric properties that I did research on and said, okay, this is a valid measure. But that's how I measured collaborative exploration. And then I did the same thing, reestablishing the relationship with the person who harmed me would be, and I'm asking the person to examine the role of reconciliation by checking a box on how they feel on these 6 opposing adjectives. The person who harmed me is remorseful or unapologetic, and I'm looking at this idea of remorse and change and whether or not they want to change. And the 4th part, in the future, my relationship with the person who harmed me is likely to be, and I'm trying to explore whether or not the person will seek to renegotiate the relationship or go it alone. And so let's give it a shot. Take your camera on your iPhone. This is seriously going to work. You take your camera on your iPhone and point it to this. If you want, you don't have to. This is just for fun. All right. And point it at this. And you will get the forgiveness reconciliation inventory on your phone or iPad just by taking a picture. And you can fill it out. You just can click the boxes. And at the end, you're going to get 4 scores. Write those numbers down. Write down those 4 scores. All right. And seriously, this will take about 5 minutes. I'm going to pause. I'm going to let you do this. And don't forget your 4 numbers. Get your 4 numbers. And then we're going to play with the numbers that you get. Okay. It'll be fun. And don't worry. You don't have to tell the group any deep, dark secrets. This is just a participatory exercise. So you don't always have to listen to me talk. But trust me, it'll be kind of cool. So I'm going to be quiet for a second and let you do this and give you about 5 minutes. Okay, Duncan, Kevin, awesome. All right, so let's have some fun with this. And I don't want you to like I said, you don't have to disclose or anything like that. But would anybody like to share their 4 scores? With the with me, and I'll show you how this works.
Hello, my name is Candy. I'll gladly share mine.
Thanks, Candy. What'd you get?
22.
Okay.
24 and 19.
22, 24. There should be 4 scores.
Okay, 19 and 9.
Okay, 22, 24. Whoops.
19.
99. 22, 24, 19, and then 9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we've never met before, but if I were looking at this, as your profile, I would say that the person who you're thinking about, you've had some positive experiences with. You think about this person in a positive way and would like for this person, you'd like to work things out with this person, but the person is a little ambivalent about whether or not they've changed, and you're thinking that that's not good enough. I'm going to end up going it alone on this because they really haven't made the steps I need this person to make. Does that sound pretty accurate?
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, I don't think there's a need to make amends with the relationship.
Mhm.
But that's the primary reason, is because I don't think the person has fully changed to where we can have an amicable relationship.
Right, right. So yeah, I'm kind of looking at this, and your profile kind of looks like this one, where you're here in the middle, and then it drops down with lower scores. This, you didn't drop down as severely. Your score is more moderate, but it's pretty close to this profile. And I call this the just no profile, where in many situations reconciliation is just not going to happen. Um, these profiles follow a similar pattern to no, no, and hell no. But at least one score in the first three phases is elevated, and you have that. You actually have two scores that are elevated, and each of these scenarios leads to a similar outcome where you go on a more intrapersonal path. Although you're able to see some elements of the offender in a positive light, the remaining elements point to reconciliation being less likely and maybe even unhealthy in some cases. So, so what I do is you actually get kind of a profile of how these scores play out. How do we do? Was that kind of accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. How about somebody else?
My scores kind of went up and down. So
Okay.
It was lower and then up and then down and then up again. That was kind of interesting.
Okay. Let's see it. What'd you get?
Okay, so sorry, I put it in the chat. Let me go pull it real quick. So I've got 15,
Okay.
then 26, then 16, and then 23.
That's a fun one.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you know well enough that probably fits my personality.
So, that's kind of like, I don't know about this person. There can be some benefit to figuring things out, but they haven't really changed. And, I can have some relationship with this person. It seems rather conflictual though. Honestly, it's a little odd, because usually when you drop down to this below average point, and you're going up, you're basically talking about reconciling with somebody who's had a limited amount of remorse and change. And so that's always a concern. When I talk about a profile like this, I do so, and we'll find something similar. It's kind of like this, but not as severe. This is a real severe one. Let's see here. You started low and then went high, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so that's kind of not going to change, and this is unhealthy.
That's so right on.
So that's cool. And so, yeah, might be someone who's putting others before yourself. You have alternating low and high scores. You might view the person who caused harm to you in a negative light, but you consider the relationship for external reasons. Maybe you're being pressured. Oh, people are saying, just get over it. Forgive this person. It's not a big deal. You need to get over this. Or maybe you have a cultural expectation of not holding grudges. And so you acknowledge that maybe there's some greater good in not holding a grudge, but it's hard because this person isn't likely to change. And you kind of have to, approach the relationship with some trepidation in order to protect yourself. So how does that sound?
Yeah, that's really true. It's a family friend,
Yeah.
like friend of the family. And so I need to make peace with it. And I am that kind of person. I want to make peace with people. So those things are pushing me, but I'm, of course, also Sicilian. and you totally did me wrong, and I really want to say you're dead to me, like that, so that like that nature and nurture are fighting each other.
Yeah. So yeah, and so that happens. And so you know, um yeah, and the funny thing about forgiveness is that it is cultural. Let me talk about that for a second, because you know, one of the situations I talk about in the book, and it's a really difficult conversation to have, but I talk about the Dylan Roof shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, at the church where it's an African American church, and Dylan Roof goes in and murders, I think 9 people die in that. And shortly thereafter, at the hearing in front of the judge, family members of the deceased are telling Dylan Roof, I forgive you because I have to forgive you, and may God have mercy on your soul. And I'm like, wow, that's powerful. And whereas there seems to be a decisional forgiveness, there isn't an emotional forgiveness. Are people expressing something that they're emotionally ready to express? We see this play out in a court hearing for Brant Jean, where a police officer goes into an apartment. She thinks that's hers. It's not. She murders the man in his apartment. And the brother is in court crying and says, I forgive you. And this made national news. We watched this. The New York Times wrote about a story that happened a number of years ago, in which a Muslim church, a mosque, was vandalized in Fort Smith, Arkansas by 3 men. And the 3 men are arrested. And one of the men writes a letter of apology to the mosque while he's in jail. And members of the mosque and the imam say, we forgive you. And they pay his fines and help him find work after he serves his term. And so there's this theme in the concept of forgiveness, of justice and restitutional justice and reconciliation. But also as there's a theme of decisional forgiveness versus emotional forgiveness. And all these play out in various ways. And we have to ask ourselves, do I feel pressured to forgive? And if I do, maybe one way I can work through this is by understanding that there are different forms of forgiveness, that forgiveness doesn't necessarily imply that I must renegotiate my relationship and have an interpersonal connection with this person. It is okay to say, I'm not going to lose any more sleep over you. I don't hold any ill will towards you, but we're done. And that is a different type of forgiveness, but it is forgiveness nonetheless. There are also situations we may encounter where the person who harmed us is deceased. We can't renegotiate the relationship, but we can recognize that what I want from this person, I'm never going to get. And so we see different ways and conceptualizations that forgiveness may play out. And so what I present in the book is, in general, 16 different profiles. And there's more, but these are just general profiles that play out, including everything is awesome, where basically, yes, I like this person, reconciliation is beneficial, I want to make things right and renegotiate the relationship because they have changed and they're not going to cause harm anymore. And so everything is awesome. And then, of course, there's the exact opposite of no, no, and hell no, where, this person was abusive and neglectful and reconciliation is not beneficial and they're not going to change and we're done. But I'm not angry anymore. And then we have just different types of, where we kind of get confused about things. For example, I might need to rethink this. I'm saying there's not a lot of good here, but I'm still thinking about going back to this relationship. I see this a lot with domestic abuse victims. Or the opposite. You know what? This person has changed. There would be some benefit to reconciling, but I don't do that. Once you harm me in this way, we're done. And so sometimes you just have a line in the sand. And again, all of this is context bound. We might see, let's see here. I like this one, not going to change and this is unhealthy. We talked about that one a little bit. But there's also, this is toxic, but I like it. Maybe you know people who have been in toxic relationships and they continue to go back because they enjoy being in a toxic relationship. And so we see that sometimes, I like this person, but it's not beneficial and it's not healthy for me and they're not going to change, but I'm going to continue to be with this person, in some way. And so, sometimes we see profiles that we go, yikes, and we have to admit that sometimes we are excited by relationships that aren't always healthy. And so, this is a paradigm I use because what I find when working with people and talking with people is that it's one thing to talk about what you experience. It's another thing to visualize it and having some data be brought to you about where you are in this process. And that's kind of the note that I want to end on here before we go to question and answer, is that this is indeed a process. This is not a diagnostic tool or a labeling tool. You don't take this and go, oh, I'm a forgiving person or I'm an unforgiving person. Rather, you look at this and you go, you know what? In this context, this is where I'm at in this process. And that's good information to have. And maybe I need to rethink this now if this isn't healthy for me. So I'm going to pause for a moment and, I'd love to hear from you and see what questions you might have. We have about 9 minutes.
Well, Dr. Balkin, I'll ask you a question. So when I think of forgiveness, I think there is a good deal of communication being the root of forgiveness. But in some extreme cases, I don't know, like when I think of the person that I chose was my mother-in-law, and this is very cheesy, but I know everyone probably has or has had issues with in-laws. And as we come up on Thanksgiving, that's just not a conversation you want to have. I can't forgive you for being not the friendliest right now at Thanksgiving. So how do you combat that put up and shut up attitude? Or, what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, that's a good situation. That's a good question. One of the things that I think we have to look at is how much energy do we expel in this frustration we have towards this person? At some point in time, I expect people to do what they tend to show me they're going to do. you know, rarely am I surprised by people, especially if I know them. They do what I expect them to do, and they tend not to change. And so I prepare myself, knowing that, you know, I go in, you know, sometimes I have to go in with guard up, you know, I know what's about to happen, you know. Um, I know some conversations are likely to be frustrating. Um, so I think that's an important element, and just to kind of get our expectations about people. I call it reality testing. You know, you know, be aware of what people give you, because that's probably what they're going to give you, and and there we go. The other thing I will say is that we don't always have to not be angry. Anger gets a bad rap, all right? Sometimes anger is a good thing. Anger protects us, all right? Anger is empowering, you know? There are some people that you probably don't like, and you're never going to like them, all right? I had a colleague where I worked at a previous university. She didn't like me. I didn't like her. Nothing was going to change that, you know? Yeah. Yeah. So, that happens. And so, but give yourself permission to get frustrated, and know you're not a bad person if you get frustrated, because what this person does is frustrating. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It looks like Sarah has a question too. What if someone wants to forgive/reconcile, but the offender does not want to forgive/reconcile? What is your advice for folks in that situation?
Yeah, that goes, that goes right along our model here. That's right here. We want remorse and change, but it's not going to happen. And so at that point, it really is a grieving process. It really is coming to terms with what I want from this person, I'm never going to get. This relationship is not going to be what I want it to be. And think about that. Think about how it is that you grieve. If there's one thing that we all experience in life, we will all lose something, lose someone, lose a relationship that we value. It might be with a pet. It might be with a sibling, spouse, friend, parent. Grief is a universal experience. We will all experience grief. All right. And one thing that we know about grief is that over time, we eventually do better. Sometimes we go and we get help. Sometimes we talk about it. Sometimes we seek out our support system. But very rarely do we get stuck in grief. And so when this relationship doesn't heal, understand that you might go through a process. Is there a link to the measure other than the QR code? There is. There is. If you email me at rsbalkin@olemiss.edu, I can get that for you. It's also in the book. So I actually I published the measure in the book, and everybody can use it and see it and see the results. So that's so yeah. If you want to, but if you want the electronic version, I can share that with you. So, anything else as we close up shop? It can be more difficult when going through a process with a person who hurt you, because y'all are bound by your children. Yeah, that is very true. And what is the purpose of the first question? Do you find people trustworthy? It's not scored. It's a practice. It's an example to show you how to do the measure. You don't fill it out. It's just there as an example to explain how the measure works. So a heuristic exercise, if you would. So, and like I said, if you live in Oxford, this is in square books, by the way. Don't you think at some point you just have to give those people those issues to carry as you cannot anymore? Yeah, I do. That's part of that intrapersonal process of sometimes going it alone and recognizing that what you want from someone you're not going to get, you know. But again, you know, it's not an instantaneous moment. You go through a process with that. So, yeah, I devote a whole chapter to that process. So it's you know, it's not just a quick, oh, it's not just a decision. You know, it's really coming to terms with you know, when somebody owes you something that you won't get. You know, and that hurts.
Well, I think we are just about out of time. So Dr. Balkin, thank you so much for your thoughtful and very insightful last hour discussion with us. I know I took a lot away, and maybe the holidays will be a little bit easier. So thank you so much. And we appreciate everybody joining us. And you can get his book at Square Books, and they do ship to Cleveland, Ohio, or wherever you need it. So thank y'all so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.